Hi, I'm Girish Menon. I'm the Chief Executive of ActionAid UK and I'm based in London. It's a delight to be here today for the Teens in AI Hackathon. This is the first time that I have an opportunity to be at an event like this. It's amazing to be in the midst of so many young people who I'm sure have got lots of bright and innovative ideas. And I'm really looking forward to some stimulating challenges coming through a lot of creative thinking, especially since we have young people from across the world, from 40 cities. It's really inspiring to hear about the vision that's behind this hackathon, which is about increasing diversity and inclusion in AI approaches. So, the theme that I'm going to talk about is empowerment. More specifically, how can we rapidly inform and empower communities around the world to stay safe and healthy during a COVID-19 outbreak? This is obviously a very serious concern that is gone across the world. We have seen how it affects so many different people very differently. And in many ways, it might seem like we are in it together. There is one theme that goes around. It doesn't matter whether you are in the so-called global south or in the so-called global north. It doesn't matter whether you live in a city or a village. It's impacting on everybody, and so it's quite common to hear people say we are in it together. But I have a different view, as do many of my colleagues who work around the world trying to do something about reaching out to communities most affected with the crisis. It doesn't impact on everybody the same way. We know that societies, communities, countries, why, even families are highly unequal in the way they are constructed. Societies have often seen a lot of injustices, and we see that across the world. ActionAid UK is an international organization working across over 30 countries, and we work with a focus on women and girls. We work with women and girls living in poverty in the global south. So, what I'm going to say and talk about today on this theme of empowerment is pretty much through the lens of women and girls who are experiencing the COVID-19 crisis very differently from what we may have seen or heard. We have seen three key areas in which lives of women and girls have been very seriously, very disproportionately, and very adversely affected. The first is increase in violence against women and girls as more and more are living in more and more confined spaces with very little access to a support network or the police or any other mechanism that they could otherwise rely upon when they face violence. So that's the first impact, violence against women and girls. The second one is about the increase in the care responsibilities. When people fall ill, when there are more people now living together in more secluded spaces, there's a lot more additional work at home. The key message of avoiding a COVID outbreak is about hand washing with soap and water, and that requires more and more people to go out and collect water. But we know that 780 million people in the world do not have access to water, which means that the burden of caring for people at home, but also in some of these household chores, falls on the shoulders of women and girls. So that's the second impact, additional caring responsibilities. And the third is because of lockdown in almost all the countries that we work in, the people who are most affected are those in the informal sector, people who don't have a formal employment contract. They are in the unorganized sector. They are small scale business people, they are vegetable vendors, they are cleaners, they are domestic help, they are people working in lots of small enterprises like restaurants, cafes, factories, who don't have any protection against any form of employment. When there's a lockdown and when the economic crisis hits the countries as we are seeing now, people are finding it more and more difficult to find the work. Many people have been asked to just go home with no wages, no salaries, and they find themselves in a very difficult position. Two-thirds of the people in most of the countries that we work in who are in the unorganized sector happen to be women. So again, there is an economic opportunity that is lost for the women. So those are the three key impacts that I would like to talk about. One, on violence against women and girls. Second one, increased care responsibilities at home. And third is loss of economic opportunities because there aren't any jobs. So you can well imagine the serious impact it's going to have on the lives of women and girls, especially from the poorer countries, from the poorer communities, and it's going to be deep and it's going to last long. Now, to bring some of those statements to life, I looked around lots of information that we have got from across the world. So let me read out 3 cases very briefly that we have got from across the world from my colleagues who are working there. The first one is from my colleague Farah Kabir, who is ActionAid's country director in Bangladesh. And this is what she has to say. With cases of COVID-19 now confirmed in Cox's Bazar. Cox's Bazar is where 800,000 refugees who have fled Myanmar because of the persecution are living. So it's a very densely populated settlement of 800,000 people. So it's now confirmed in Cox's Bazar there's a huge risk to hundreds of thousands of people living in the town's Rohingya refugee camp. Rohingya is a community that you would have heard who have fled from Myanmar and settled themselves in Bangladesh. Support for Rohingya women and girls facing an increased risk of violence is now more critical than ever. Rohingya women and girls are already marginalized in the camp community. Many face domestic violence on a daily basis, but the increased stress, worries, and forced coexistence caused by the risk of COVID-19 is resulting in even more abuse. Moving to Liberia, this is what my colleague Lakshmi Subramani has to say. We are building on lessons learned during the Ebola crisis when there was a dramatic increase in violence against women and girls. As police were unable to respond, support services were reduced, and survivors were left unable to access justice. We are calling on the government to ensure that access to justice and women's protection are central to all national response plans. And finally, my colleague Makena Mobubia from Kenya. This is what she has to say. ActionAid Kenya is calling on the government to ensure guaranteed paid sick leave is made available to all workers, both in the formal and informal sectors, and that people living in informal settlements will have access to free, clean drinking water and health facilities staffed by skilled professionals. Information can save lives. We have been working with the government on public awareness materials and ensuring they are read, heard, and understood by communities across the nation. So friends, that's a challenge. How can you help us? How can you help empower these women and girls so that the risks that they face because of the COVID-19 outbreak are significantly reduced mitigated. Thank you and have a stimulating session forward. Wish you all good luck.